All right, we have more changes unfolding in presidential politics. Changes that have the Vice President of the United States finally, after 45 days of becoming the nominee, doing her first solo interview. And it was a train wreck so bad her team tried to bury it before it got widely circulated, but failed. Unfortunately for them, it's now gone viral. The Trump campaign posting the full uncut interview to social media, thanking Kamala Harris for the content. And two things she said during the interview, you gotta hear. I'm gonna play it in a minute, but keep in mind, this comes just a day after the first post-debate polls were released. The debate was Tuesday. Well, 5 days later, we get the results, the real results, the poll results, the post-debate polls showing who really won the debate. Who, if anyone, was swayed one way or another after watching it, and the results are surprising. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel, and consider subscribing so you don't miss these regular updates. So 50 or 60 years ago, politicians running for office, especially for the presidency, had to be able to articulate their plans, have a certain depth on policy issues, what they would do when elected. Debates were serious, policy-rich, and boring. But today, politics in this country comes down to one thing: sound bites, quick clips that resonate with voters. The candidate that can do that best usually wins the election. And Donald Trump is the master of sound bites. The way he speaks is perfect for modern era politics. They are eating pets in Springfield, Ohio, which I thought was great, by the way, because no one else will say that. He says it, and you know it pisses everybody off, like when he said the quiet part out loud about what really happened 2 months ago behind closed doors with our president. Watch this.
When this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time is
I think we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
It's moments like those that make Trump unstoppable. It's why in 2020, there was a corporate-wide blackout of him. Every time he spoke, the networks would cut away the live feed. Then an hour later, they'd come back and show you a carefully chosen snapshot, edited out of context clips to paint him in the worst possible light. They couldn't risk carrying his speeches live. His message was too powerful. Could that be why, after what corporate media's told us was Trump's worst debate performance of his career, on Tuesday he came away as the winner? And I'm not talking about debate style or character. I'm talking about the post-debate polls. If Kamala won, which is what all these political experts keep saying, what you hear nonstop on corporate media, then why in the world did the polling bump with undecided voters go to Trump and not Kamala? Or how about the exit polls with undecided voters? Watch Byron Donalds explain this on CNN yesterday. Watch this.
Look, I think when you talk about who won or lost, that's not the key thing. It's where are undecided voters. Last night, Reuters actually had a focus group of about 10 undecided voters going into the debate last night. 6 of 10 left the debate saying they were going to vote for Donald Trump. Only 3 said they were going to vote for Kamala Harris. 1 was still left undecided. That is the true measure of who won and who lost.
Now, he's referring to this Reuters poll where they had a group of undecided voters watch the debate live and then tell them who swayed them the most during the debate. Basically, if their minds were changed, if they were swayed one way or the other by a specific candidate. Well, look at the results. In fact, these post-debate polls with independents and undecided voters were so devastating to Kamala Harris that corporate media began losing their minds over it. Over on MSNBC, they actually resorted to calling these people despicable. That if you are one of the voters who decided to choose Trump after watching Tuesday's debate, you're a despicable person, they said. You can't make this up. Watch.
Everything he does is despicable.
The reason why it doesn't end his career is because his supporters are just as despicable. All right. Like Trump's whole thing, he's a narcissist, right? And so his whole thing is to have a complete lack of compassion and empathy for everybody else. It's all about him. That's why he lies about 9/11. It's all about him, me. He's probably the least compassionate president we've had in 200 years since Andrew Jackson. And it works for him because his supporters are just as ungenerous and have just as little compassion and empathy for others.
Now, the biggest criticism of his performance was his style. People say he came across angry, and I agree. In fact, if you compare Trump in 2016 at the debates to Tuesday's debate, you'll see a very different style, a different temperament. He's pissed. He's pissed off. It comes across in the way he speaks, and I was angry just watching it. Was it not driving you mad how Kamala carefully avoided answering every single question? All I wanted to hear him say was, "I'm sorry, but are you not noticing she didn't answer the question?" He could have said that every single time it was his turn to speak because she literally dodged question after question. In fact, voters were so turned off by this, even Democrats, realizing her evasiveness is beginning to get a bit too obvious. So yesterday, in an effort to remedy that, Kamala did her first solo interview of the campaign after 45 days hiding in the basement, just like her boss did in 2020. They took their chances and they let her out to do a 5-question interview. 5 questions, that's it. That's all you get. And the results were devastating. Watch.
We talk about bringing down prices and making life more affordable for people. What are 1 or 2 specific things you have in mind for that?
Well, I'll start with this. I grew up a middle-class kid. My mother raised my sister and me. She worked very hard. She was able to finally save up enough money to buy our first house when I was a teenager. I grew up in a community of hardworking people, construction workers and nurses and teachers. And I try to explain to some people who may not have had the same experience, but a lot of people will relate to this. I grew up in a neighborhood of folks who were very proud of their lawn, and I was raised to believe and to know that all people deserve dignity, and that we as Americans have a beautiful character. We have ambitions and aspirations and dreams.
Now, if you didn't pick up on that, that was the same question she got in the debate. The first question of the debate was also the first question of this interview, and she dodged it again. I thought the whole point of doing this interview was to not come across as evasive. Yeah, she just couldn't get it together. How will you bring down prices in your administration? What are 1 or 2 specific things, Kamala, you will do? Well, I grew up in a middle-class family and in a community that loved their lawns. And it got worse. Watch.
People have a question, given maybe your current role as Vice President of the United States, how different you are from Joe Biden.
Well, I'm obviously not Joe Biden. And, I offer a new generation of leadership. And so, for example, thinking about developing and creating an opportunity economy where it's about investing in areas that really need a lot of work, and maybe focusing on, again, the aspirations and the dreams, but also just recognizing that at this moment in time, some of the stuff we could take for granted years ago, we can't take for granted anymore.
After all the noise about how poorly Trump did, here's what the polls are saying. And realize we're going to get more data over the next week, but we do have a handful of polls that were just released. Rasmussen, who, by the way, was the only polling outlet who was right in 2016. They came out with a post-debate poll showing Trump obtained a 2-point bump post-debate nationally, saying, quote, "The race for the White House continues to be close as former President Donald Trump holds a 2-point lead over Vice President Kamala Harris." The latest Rasmussen Reports national telephone and online survey finds that 49% of likely U.S. voters would vote for Trump, while 47% today would vote for Harris. Just 1%, they say, would vote for some other candidate, and another 2% are undecided. And the Trafalgar Group released a post-debate poll this morning on Saturday showing Trump holding his lead in North Carolina by 2 points. And look, pollsters are saying that North Carolina could end up being the next make-or-break state this election, just like Pennsylvania usually is. Minnesota, Harris is up by 5. Another North Carolina poll's got Trump up by 3. Michigan, they are tied, a dead heap in Michigan, which is amazing. The only other national poll that was released with polling data post-debate was the Reuters Ipsos poll that has Harris leading by 5. Because even though these other polls you see here were released post-debate, the surveys, the actual surveys themselves were conducted pre-debate. So we have the Rasmussen poll and the Reuters poll. But I will say the Reuters Ipsos poll has had Kamala leading for months now. They had her leading by 3 back in July, 4 points in August, and now 5 points yesterday. Then we have the betting markets, all right, which, by the way, I trust more than all these polls combined. This shows the real measure of the people. $900 million in bets have been made on poly markets so far, and Kamala is leading Trump by 0.2%. It is as close as you can get. She did, by the way, get a minor bump on Polymarket, but only slightly, a slight bump in bets. So look, all of this means what? So far, the debate was a dud. We got to see what happens next week when the rest of the polls start coming in. So far, it didn't give Kamala much of a bump. If anything, it highlighted to the country that she's evasive. She's scared to be honest about her plans. And what about Trump? Well, he's still Trump. And he's still neck and neck with Kamala. All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.